And a very good morning, Mark here. It is Tuesday, October the 21st, going on 10:30 a.m. Eastern. That's going on 2:30 p.m. GMT. And let's have a look how the US dollar is performing today. Started strong, certainly through the Asian, European into the US session. I've got support at 98.28. I've got resistance at 98.75. There you see the green daily candlestick, but you can also see a wick at the top of the candlestick, maybe a turnaround. And there you see, after establishing that resistance level in the past 2 hours, US dollar certainly giving up some of those gains at this point. We'll see whether that can continue, whether sellers continue what we're seeing now. That's as the US session gets underway and we see sellers come down, look down, attempt to revisit that 98.28 support level, or if we continue to see US dollar strength and buyers looking up at this resistance at the 98.75. But strong US dollar to start, struggling a little bit now that the US session is underway. Let's have a look how the majors are performing, starting with the Euro US. There you see third consecutive day of red candlesticks. That's selling euro, buying US dollar, strong US dollar. Resistance today at 116.55. I've got support at 116.02. It's roughly a 50 pip range to start the day. But after setting support at that level, there's a little wick left behind. We'll see if that can materialize into turnaround. That would be buying euro, selling US dollar. So from US dollar strength to US dollar weakness, let's have a look at the hourly. There you see the attempted turnaround from the support levels. Hasn't really materialized as yet. So we'll see whether euro strength can continue like we've seen the last 2 hours. That's buying euro, selling US dollar, from strong US dollar to weak US dollar, or if we're going to get a continuation of what we've seen during the Asian and European session, being selling euro, buying US dollar, and a continuation of dollar strength. Let's have a look at the pound. Starting on the daily, a pretty similar pattern to the euro. Last 3 days, you see the red candlesticks. That's selling pound, buying US dollar. That's US dollar strength. I've got resistance at 134.16. I've got support at 133.61. Again, little wick left behind here. That would be a turnaround. That would be from selling pound and buying US to buying pound, buying pounds, selling US. In other words, from strong US dollar to weak US dollar. Let's have a look if we zoom in on the hourly. And there you can see the attempted turnaround, the bounce up of this support level. There's the wicket left behind in the last hour. And here this green candlestick that's buying pounds, selling US dollar. So again, from strong US dollar, an attempt at weak US dollar giving up those gains and buying pound. We'll see whether that does materialize. But as we saw in the euro, not that easy and still hanging around the support area. Let's have a look at the US yen. Again, third straight day of strong US dollar. Support 150.46 and early resistance at 152.16. So there's the green candlestick that's buying US dollars, selling yen. But as we saw in the other two majors, it's left a wick behind. That would be a turnaround, and that would be selling US dollar and buying yen. Let's have a look if we zoom into the hourly, whether that is able to maintain. There you see it happened in the last hour. EMA's crossed to the downside on the hourly. So we'll see whether this continues, selling US dollar, buying yen, from strong US to weak US, or if we're going to get a continuation of US dollar strength and buyers look up to the 152.16 resistance area. US dollar against the Canadian. I'm on the daily. Definitely been a turnaround here. So you see it's a red candlestick now, but you can see this wick all the way up to resistance at 140.66. So that would have been buying US dollar, selling Canadian, and support at 140.12. And for now, it is a red candlestick that's selling US dollar, buying Canadian. So we already have a turnaround here in terms of the daily candlestick. If I zoom in on the hourly, there you can see the turnaround happening right now. That's selling US dollar, buying Canadian, and sellers of US looking down at the support level here at 140.12. So interesting, we've seen strong US dollar to start, certainly on the index and against the majors. Going into the second hour of the US session, we're seeing an attempted turnaround from strong US dollar to weak US dollar, euro, pound, yen, and certainly the Canadian looking to fight back against the strong US dollar. We've got resistance, support levels to work with, and I will see you at the end of today's session. Good trading.